bounty hunting is a complicated profession. Don't you agree?
It is a time of restoration. The Empire has fallen, and the New Republic begins to establish peace throughout the galaxy. But in the far reaches of the Outer Rim, where lawlessness and corruption still exist, a lone gunfighter emerges. Join Siber Wren and D.Vizsla as they track the adventures of the Mandalorian. This is the MandaLore Podcast.
If there is no path before you, create your own. I don't know why I didn't think of this earlier on when we started there, Vizsla, to just say the quotes right at the very beginning, because I've been loving them.
That's nice, yeah. Good touch.
Welcome to The Mandalore, currently the definitive podcast for the Clone Wars, and we are here to cover Season 7, Episode 5, Gone with a Trace. I am Siber Wren.
And I am D.Vizsla.
Yeah, I don't know. That came to me today when I was writing the notes. I said, dang it, I got to put the quote in there, because they've been pretty nice, so I'm just going to start quoting them from here on out.
They have been really good this year, I feel like, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's get into some news right away. And I do want to say I hope everyone is still continuing to be safe out there. It's basically stay home, take care of yourselves and your family. We don't need to talk about it. I'm sure everyone's overwhelmed by all this coronavirus stuff, but just stay safe and tune into us. Come hang with us because, we're at home in our little cubicles and being safe too, right, Vizsla?
That is correct. Watch all kinds of Star Wars.
Yeah, all kinds of Star Wars. So, there's been a couple things. Not a lot has been released, but one big news release that came out, and we weren't too sure of it at first. We thought it might have just been clickbait, but now it's being released or announced by all kinds of different sources, so we're thinking this could most definitely be confirmed. And that is Season 2 of The Mandalorian has cast somebody to play Ahsoka Tano. That's crazy. And they chose Rosario Dawson.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think it's, like you said, when I first heard the news, it was coincidental because it was Friday, the return of, Ahsoka to the Clone Wars. So it kind of was like, wow, that's convenient. But as more and more news organizations, like you said, started picking it up and releasing it over the weekend, it became more and more real. So the funny thing about it is that Rosario Dawson has been linked or talked about at least about playing this role for at least 3 or 4 years.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's why this thing has been so crazy to me, because back when Ahsoka Tano was introduced in the Rebels and she was older looking, there were a lot of speculations, like if this was ever live action, if she would ever become live action, you got to get Rosario Dawson. So that's why when I first saw it, I was like, well, that's fake, because people have been talking about that forever. So if she actually is becoming Ahsoka Tano now, this is pretty. It's one of those things where it seems very much fan driven. So,
but do the fans want her to be like? What has been the response to that? Have you seen? I didn't really see any. Oh, I love it, or oh my god, what are they doing? Wrong casting choice.
No, that's what I've seen. Is I've seen a lot of people that have known this story for a while saying like, well, yeah, look at, because there's if you Google Rosario Dawson fan art, there's a lot of people in the past few years have created fan art with her as Ahsoka Tano. So, I think that people are excited about it. I think people are blown away. I mean, what I've read is people are blown away that she's even being considered to be in live action, because everybody thought it was kind of a wishful thinking, in a sense that was introduced in the animated series. There's no way she would become a live action, part of the series. But we've seen it before, obviously, with Saw Gerrera. He started out in the Clone Wars and ended up being a live action character in Rogue One. So it'll happen. It's Filoni. We had talked about it during the first season, our speculations of what we would see. Darksaber being one, and I think Ahsoka and Sabine being definitely ones that could end up coming in. Now,
Yeah, like we've talked about for sure. Yeah.
right. Now, I forgot. I actually just now remembered, Ren. I should have put it on the notes here, but I actually read another article. I don't think it's confirmed. It might be a rumor or clickbait, but there was a article I read that the introduction of Ahsoka in season 2 of The Mandalorian is set up to be, and you know this very well coming from the TV world, a backdoor pilot to possibly her own series.
Oh, could you imagine?
Now that seems more real to me, to be honest.
Wow.
Because you don't want to take away from The Mandalorian, right? If you put Ahsoka in there too much, then it becomes Ahsoka's show. So you got to give her her own show, I feel like, with her popularity.
But isn't she popular enough to just go ahead and give her a show? Why would they need to do the backdoor pilot thing? Or, unless they do it in a way where they're just introducing her here and she heads off on her own. And I guess they wait to see the fan reaction to it. I don't know.
Yeah, because there's still a pretty good amount of people, I think, that they're familiar with her, but they haven't seen all of her stories. And they haven't watched all of the Clone Wars or all of Rebels. So I think they're familiar with who she is now, but I don't think they know everything about her. So I think you have to do some kind of introduction where you're explaining where she came from, who she is, why she's there, and then you can move on to her story, I think. So very similar to Barry Allen, right? In Arrow, you know.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, very true. I guess they could do it that way, which it worked for them. So yeah.
Well, I think it's inevitable that you're going to have Sabine as well. You have to.
Oh,
the last time we saw Ahsoka, she was with Sabine. So
maybe they're still together, or there's still a connection there between the two of them.
Yes.
Very, very cool. Well, I will post a picture. I'll find one of those pictures of Rosario as Ahsoka and post it on the Facebook page.
Yeah.
And for those of you that don't know who Rosario is, I mean, this is something I wanted to ask you about, but she's a little bit older. She is 41 years of age, which I was a little bit surprised because we mostly know Ahsoka to be more of a young character. So to be introducing an older actress, not that she's old, but you know, she's not young and spry anymore. That kind of surprised me. So I'm wondering what the take on Ahsoka is going to be here with that. Unless Rosario, with all the makeup and everything, she's just capable of playing the younger role, because it's going to be a physically demanding role for sure.
Yeah, well, when we were talking about that, I ended up looking up and making sure at this point in The Mandalorian, though, Ahsoka is 46 years old.
Okay, well, I was going to save this for one of our sections, but I'm just going to ask you right now, like, her species is 46 years old the same as humans?
Yeah, I think there's not definitive lifespans for Togrutas, which is what her species is. So they're very humanoid. They're humans, basically, in a sense.
Okay.
They have different headgear, what they call lectu, but we'll talk about that later. But I think they're kind of standard as far as humans go. There's nothing to saying that they can live like 300 years or anything like that.
Right. Okay. Well, then that works. Then I mean, if she's 46 and Rosario is 41 playing the part, then that works great. Then how? Just a quick question, and I might sound dumb asking it, but how old is Anakin at this point?
Yeah. See that Okay, so that's funny you bring that up, because if you go back to, there's a really old, a few years ago, episode we did about this where we talked about the age of Anakin and the age of Obi-Wan, because the people that played them, Alec Guinness that played Obi-Wan in A New Hope, and then, of course, when you get to Return of the Jedi, and Sebastian Shaw, who plays Anakin when Vader finally removes his helmet, right?
Yeah.
So those two people in real life played very older characters. They were older in real life than the characters they were playing. So, but you never really, when you first saw it in theaters back in the 80s, you never really questioned that, because there was no reference of how old they were in the Clone Wars, right? So But when they go back and now and actually establish their ages in the prequels, Alec Guinness and Sebastian, they were way too older for those characters. So technically, Anakin in Return of the Jedi, when he takes his helmet off, he actually should look more like Hayden Christensen than he should Sebastian Shaw. So,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, so yeah. So the question is so at Anakin, at the point of Return of the Jedi, when he passes, you know,
that's only 5 years before Mandalorian.
That's right. So he's not. So when Ahsoka is introduced to us in the Clone Wars, that right after Episode 2, she's 14. At that point, Anakin is 19.
So they're only 5 years apart.
So they're only 5 years apart. So he is only. So he's what I say. She was 41. So he's about 46 when he dies in Return of the Jedi.
And that guy looked much, much older.
I think he was in his 60s when he played that part.
I mean, we could hand wave it away that, well, you know, he got burnt up pretty badly by the lava. And
yeah, he ages quickly. Yes, you could.
Yeah, his health just deteriorates because of, you know, he's on life support constantly with the suit, so he's just deteriorating. But there's all those stories about him that's why he's in that special chamber that we saw him in too. He's constantly being healed, little by little, but not healed to the point of replenishing his skin and his youth. It's just keeping him alive, I guess.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. There's a few maybe timeline issues.
In Obi-Wan, 19 years in the desert ages him quicker than he would if he was, living a normal life. So you can make those arguments for sure.
You could. It's nothing that I really want to pick at. Really, like, no biggie.
Yeah, but how? I wonder how many people would be so mad or even appreciative if they. I know they wouldn't do it, but if they replaced that Return of the Jedi shot with Hayden Christensen.
Yeah.
I'm
surprised he didn't. With all the fixes that Lucas did, I'm surprised he didn't.
I'm surprised he didn't either. You're right.
I mean, he replaced the ghost at the end with him. So.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Crazy. Wow, geez, that's a lot more about Ahsoka that we're going to talk about her quite a bit this episode. But for Rosario, if you're curious who Rosario Dawson is, she has voiced Wonder Woman in so many of the DC animated movies, and I looked it up. She's done about 7 or 8 of them at least. Mm-hmm. So she's really, really good at the speaking roles for these characters. And if you listen to Wonder Woman sounds amazing in those movies. So she does a good job there. And if you watch the Marvel Netflix series Daredevil, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, and Defenders, she played a character called Claire Temple in there. Mm-hmm. So she's well. If you see her face, she's one of those actresses that's like, oh yeah, I know her. But when you hear her name, you often can't picture her.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there. So it's exciting
with her. Yep.
It's very exciting. I will post a picture of her and Ahsoka, and you'll see that she is a perfect fit for the role. Actually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now I got a question here. I didn't post this article. If I can find it again, I'll send it to you. But I wanted to ask you. There was a discussion by somebody wanting to express his thoughts on which animated series was better, Clone Wars or Rebels. And when I read through it, and he basically said Rebels ends up being the better animated series. And I want to get your thoughts on this. His reasons were that, yes, Clone Wars went for 6 seasons, Rebels only went for 4, but the difference between the two is Clone Wars didn't focus on one group of characters for its entire series. It had all these different story arcs. You talked about the clones themselves. You talked about Anakin, Obi-Wan. You talked about, Ahsoka. There was all these different branches, and so every episode or every episode arc, you'd be focused on a few characters, and then for the next 5 weeks it'd be different characters. So it made it feel like a whole bunch of little stories all sewn together into one big story. Where he said Rebels focused on one team and one team only. The entire story was about the main kid and learning about his abilities and training to become a Jedi. Sorry, I'm mind blanking on his name.
Ezra,
thank you. And the entire series was focused around him, and because of that, you got much deeper stories, much more in-depth character development and connection between everybody, because it stayed focused on the one group of people. And that's why he said Rebels is better, where Clone Wars was breaking it up constantly that you never felt as connected to them as you did with Rebels. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
That's a tough question, because I think I'm partial to Clone Wars, but
I know you are. That's why I wanted to ask.
I think Rebels. I think that article is exactly right, though. I think Rebels is definitely more directed towards and locked into to that group of 5 characters there, where you have Kanan and Ezra, then you have Hera, Sabine, and Zeb, and of course Chopper making the 6th Spectre there. But I think because that was so centered, it did make for a good series. But I think, in all honesty, Rebels, though, if you really pay attention to it, to me, because the first season was good, it wasn't great, and I feel like it wasn't until Vader came in, it wasn't until Ahsoka came in, it wasn't until Rex came in that you really heightened, and obviously Thrawn. It wasn't until those characters really came in there that people started really paying attention to it and really accepting that this is Star Wars canon, that this was a real good show, and that it really did start the rebellion, and it kind of formed the Rebel Alliance. Because if those characters didn't come in there, I think the unfamiliarity of these characters really wouldn't have driven it that much. So with that said, you take those characters, and it's like that's where Clone Wars is, where those characters came from. And I don't know at one point I was going to say this on this episode, but there was an interview with Filoni recently where he talked about how this season of Clone Wars right now, this last season, season 7, it actually is truly, yes, it's about wrapping up the whole show, but it's truly actually wrapping up what the series, the characters that this series is most about, which is Ahsoka and Rex. And we've got Rex, his arc was the first 4 here, with the Bad Batch. Now we've got Ahsoka's, and then the last 4 episodes, which is the Siege of Mandalore, will be about them both coming together to go fight Maul and free Mandalore. So this season is technically becoming the closure of the Clone Wars, but in the eyes of Rex and Ahsoka, who ultimately we know go on to do Rebels. So to me, the Clone Wars, there are a lot of side missions and side characters that you're trying to do stories around, but ultimately the majority of these episodes contains Rex or Ahsoka or both. And it is, if you look at, it's funny because after I watched this last episode again the other day, when you're watching Disney Plus, at the end of the episode it kind of suggests the next episode or something else. My suggestion, for some reason, after every episode of Clone Wars, my suggestion has always been the Clone Wars movie, the first thing that came out, right?
Right.
And last night, I actually rewatched it. I said, you know what? Okay, let it play. And I watched it again, and it introduced, Ahsoka. It introduces Rex to us. We've never seen these characters before. And there's a great conversation between the two of them in that first movie. And looking back and watching that, it's like, wow, we see them grow with each other throughout this whole series. And everybody out there falls in love with Rex and Ahsoka. I mean, they've become strong characters. But that's a long-winded answer to say that I feel like Clone Wars to me is better, just because those characters, there is true and strong development in the series, and I think that there's more meaningful character development, and the whole part of the Clone Wars is so instrumental in the timeline of Star Wars, not just the relevance of the battles, but where it falls in the canon of Star Wars. It's so important. So that's why I would go with it. But
well, it's interesting with all the points you said. That was one of the things that he had brought up. Is he said because Clone Wars has come back now, that was actually his point to prove why Rebels was better. Because he said, Clone Wars comes back with it a final season, and it's only 12 episodes or however long it is, really short season. And he said, this is the time to focus and give us hardcore, serious stories and episodes, and not have it all broken up between these different mini story arcs, because there's not enough time to do that. And he was really picking on the episode that we're going to talk about tonight. He was saying this episode just was nothing. It was filler stuff, and it doesn't push the story along. It doesn't do much for making you feel like you just watched something epic when you know you've only got 12 episodes this season. And he was feeling really disappointed, and then he went on to say, well, this is a bad decision. They should have made this season about one solid storyline, and that is it. So I don't know. It was an interesting argument. I'll see if I can find it to send to you again, but I just read, I wasn't in agreement or disagreement with it. I was like, oh, an interesting perspective, I guess.
Okay.
So there you go.
Okay. Yeah. I could see a little bit of that, but yeah, I can see a little bit of that.
well, you know what? We'll have our final decision by the time this season ends, and we'll know for sure ourselves what we think. And you can count on our opinion, because that's all that matters, right?
That's right.
Okay, now I'm going to swing away from the animated series just for a moment here. I came across another article here that I'm just going to read it, because this guy basically goes into a deep discussion about C-3PO and R2-D2. And it's focused around whether C-3PO remembers that Darth Vader was the one who originally built and designed him, or should say designed and built him. So it's a very interesting article. I'm just going to read it because I didn't want to pull anything out of it. So I'm going to go through it. It might take me a minute or two, and you can tell me your thoughts and what you think about it afterwards, David. But R2 and C-3PO are two of the most popular characters. R2 is my favorite character, and I think this is just fantastic, the way this guy puts it together. So I'll read it, and you tell me what you think. All right. C-3PO and R2-D2 about their memories wiped. 3PO remembers that Darth Vader made him. C-3PO's memory was erased after Revenge of the Sith, but a revelation in Rise of Skywalker hints he may have gotten those memories back. As audiences know now, C-3PO is tasked with reading an ancient Sith inscription containing information vital to Rey's mission. Unfortunately, the droid's programming prevents him from sharing the translation. With time running out and no other options, C-3PO agrees to have the information extracted from his mind, although the process wipes his memory. It's a noble sacrifice that leaves the droid completely amnesic, until R2-D2 restores virtually all of C-3PO's memories from a backup a few scenes later. But it isn't the first time C-3PO's mind has been wiped. The sequence calls back to a similar scene in Revenge of the Sith when Bail Organa, that's Leia's adoptive dad, when he orders 3PO's memory be erased to prevent him from sharing information about Anakin Skywalker's fall to the dark side. The scene helps clear up any continuity errors when C-3PO re-encounters but does not remember Obi-Wan Kenobi, Luke Skywalker, and even his maker, Darth Vader, in the later films. However, Bail Organa does not have R2-D2's memory banks wiped clean, which begs the question, could R2's memory backup have given 3PO his lost memories as well? A look into the Star Wars Expanded Universe stories, some of which may be considered legends by Disney at this point, but that doesn't matter, reveals just how much R2-D2 witnessed and recorded during the Clone Wars. As has been noted in several instances, R2 has never had a full memory wipe, enabling him to retain his recollections of everything he saw and heard over the decades. This includes his first meeting with Padme Amidala, a 9-year-old Anakin Skywalker, and C-3PO himself during the events of The Phantom Menace. R2 was also present at the first Battle of Geonosis and was a witness, along with C-3PO, to the secret wedding of Padme and Anakin during Attack of the Clones. So despite C-3PO's claim in The Rise of Skywalker that R2-D2's backup memories are unreliable, the astromech droid likely has a very detailed backup of C-3PO's pre-A New Hope memory, as well as countless recordings he took of his own experiences during the Clone Wars. Considering how many missions R2 went on in the course of three separate galactic wars, R2-D2 is the greatest war historian in the universe. This real question now becomes whether or not R2-D2 would actually share all of those recordings with C-3PO, or anyone else for that matter. Despite the droid's apparent obsession with recording war stories, R2 rarely shared this information with anyone, which is probably why Bail Organa let R2-D2 keep his memories and why Princess Leia Organa chose R2 to safeguard the Death Star plans in A New Hope. R2-D2 knows the importance of security, which is why he was reluctant to show Leia's recording to anyone except Obi-Wan Kenobi and kept up the pretense of not knowing characters like Obi-Wan or Yoda, all of whom he had met in the prequels. As a result, it's a given that R2 never gave C-3PO back his memories during the original trilogy, knowing that the talkative protocol droid would inevitably open up his mouth and share everything he knew about Darth Vader's true identity. Considering that C-3PO met Darth Vader many times in the Star Wars comics, set during the original trilogy, but did not refer to him as the Maker or Master Anakin, it's clear he did not have his memories at that point. Even after the Empire was defeated and Darth Vader died, R2 was still reluctant to divulge what he knew. This is seen in a subplot of the Dark Nest trilogy. In this story, Luke discovers one of R2's secret recordings and realizes the droid knew his mother. R2 does not want to show Luke the recordings he made of Anakin and Padme, fearing that might upset his new master. Eventually, however, he discloses the information, showing Luke recordings of how Anakin attacked Padme, how Luke and Leia were born, and how Padme died. The recordings sadden Luke, and make R2 relive some painful experiences as well. R2 could have returned C-3PO's memories sometime after Return of the Jedi. With the Empire gone and more people learning about Darth Vader's true identity, the need for secrecy simply wasn't that important anymore. Plus, R2 has shown a capacity for expressing sadness and loneliness. C-3PO and R2-D2 have been constant companions for decades, with 3PO even calling R2 his best friend in Rise of Skywalker. However, because of C-3PO's memory wipes, R2 is the only one left to carry the burden of everything they saw, heard, or did during these wars. Having someone with shared experiences to talk to would be a great relief for someone forced to keep so many secrets for so many years, making it likely that R2 gave 3PO his memories back at some point. It's even possible that when R2, unwilling to lose his best friend, reloaded C-3PO's backup memories into his head in Rise of Skywalker, that all of 3PO's lost memories, including those from the Clone Wars, were restored. As a result, 3PO once again knows that Anakin Skywalker was his maker, something that will likely leave the uptight droid in distress as he registers the implications. Knowing this, R2 may have installed some safeguards, similar to the program that prevents 3PO from translating Sith writing into the droid's head to keep C-3PO from having a complete meltdown. R2 might be a sentimental droid, but he is not stupid. There you go. How's that for a story? Just a story as itself. I love it.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of information right there.
I know it's a lot, but see if there was parts that you could pull out of it that you want to respond to.
Well, to be honest, it's hard to say because a lot of this is still actually a lot of speculation out there about what memories truly, because you know where this came from, where you read this from, they're piecing a lot of what we know from the movies and some of the books, but what memories did he truly get back? We still don't really know. But I will say that what's hard, because you got to remember, I think for everybody listening, is the thing about droids. In the article you read, he talks about R2 being reluctant to do this and 3PO not wanting to do that. The thing about it is that droids, they actually don't have feelings. They have mandates, right? They have protocols, and they do what they're told, or they do the things that they're supposed to do. That's why when you said that, when I was listening to you read that, where Leia, who R2 is assigned to on. Well, technically their master is Captain Antilles, but they know Leia's their master as well. But when she tells R2, get this message to Obi-Wan Kenobi, I mean, that's his mission, and no matter what, that's the only one that's supposed to see the message, right? Regardless of what Luke wants or what 3PO wants him to do, he's not going to show anybody the message besides Obi-Wan. So it's I don't know. I don't know what the answer is fully. I do think that when R2 establishes his memory back in The Rise of Skywalker, does it have all of the memories? I think that would actually be pretty cool.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I don't know what, and is R2, how often was R2 backing up his memories? I don't know.
Yeah, it makes you wonder. I mean,
because he does remember, doesn't he? Like when he gets his memory back in Rise of Skywalker, he does remember getting ready to leave with Rey on that mission. So he had backed it up at that point.
Right.
So does his backup include everything, or does it include from the last backup? I don't know. That's tough. That's a tough thing to say.
Well, and that's where the speculation comes from, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah. And I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but I also agree with parts of the article that R2 has shown, reluctance. He has shown loneliness. He has shown despair and worry and stuff. And to me, those are feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Like he is almost on his way to being sentient. That's what's so great about these droids. They're not just robots. They do seem to have emotion, at least to the way they're responding, whether you could say it's just their programming. But R2 especially has shown, he's shown being arrogant, being full of pride, being a jokester. Like, I think he's a little bit more beyond just being a droid and just following his programming. I think he's capable of, being, defiant a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Until, when someone says, wait, okay, no, R2, show me that now. Like he'll resist until he no longer can anymore. So yeah, I don't know. I like to kind of, I can pull from both your argument and what he was stating, because R2's my favorite, so I'm giving him.
Yeah, they're different. I mean, they definitely. I'm not saying that they don't act a certain way. They I just don't. They don't. They're not artificial intelligence. They're not AI, so they don't. I mean, they can learn, but they. They don't think for themselves. Because remember, like Obi-Wan even says it in that one thing with Dexter in the diner when he says, "If droids can think, we'd all be in trouble." Right? Droids can't really. They're only as good as their programming. So, yes, could they do something that simulates reluctancy or anger or frustration? Sure, because they probably have that type of programming, but to fully make decisions completely on their own or deduce the situation to come up with ideas that's not part of what they've learned in the past. It technically doesn't really work like that.
Right.
So, we definitely, I think as viewers, we definitely see personality in 3PO and R2, and they are arguably the most common denominators in all of Star Wars. But, and of course, yeah, I think they have their own personalities for sure. But it's hard to figure out what they to say. Well, he's thinking this, or even the fact that, again, like R2, if R2 is witnessing the marriage of Anakin and Padme, how much does he actually really know of the situation that's happening? Does he understand what a marriage is? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Those are questions that I don't know the answers to, really. But it's interesting to think that. Is he just watching two people standing there, doing something? Or is he actually putting together that, okay, these people are married now, they love each other, that they're going to devote their lives to. I don't know if that process is with a droid.
I don't know. I think he probably know. I mean, I'm sure he's programmed with what it is. He seems to know what it is. Maybe he doesn't get the emotions of it or anything like that, but I'm sure he understands what a wedding is and what the meaning of it is. For his masters, because because they.
But he's an astromech. That they're not supposed to know that technically, right? So. I mean, how much can he learn? That's the question. Is he could probably learn something like that, but if he's not told what it is, I'm not sure how he learns it. Right?
Well, I mean, because he witnesses it, so maybe he learns from witnessing everything. I mean, I want to call back to my favorite line of the entire article is that R2 is the greatest historian in the universe. Yeah. I mean, you think about what he has witnessed and that he records everything. Holy cow, get us a hard drive like what's in his body for our computers, eh? Jeez. But just the amount that he has witnessed throughout these 3 galactic wars is astounding. And like you said, him, 3PO too, but mostly R2, he's the only character that's been through everything, all 3 trilogies.
Yeah.
So,
and then,
plus the animated movies and everything.
And then again, and this last thing I'll say is I think, I don't know how and when C-3PO would have been told that Anakin is Darth Vader, because even, he never saw him turn, obviously, and he never saw him get rebuilt. And no one in the galaxy really knows who Vader is.
Yeah. So
I'm not sure how he would even know that Vader was Anakin, unless Obi-Wan tells him or something like that. But because what's funny too is that scene in A New Hope where Luke gets or Obi-Wan first gives Luke his lightsaber, right? Anakin's lightsaber. So do you remember that scene where right when Obi-Wan says, "Your father wanted you to have this when you were old enough, but your uncle wouldn't allow it." Right then, 3PO turns to Luke and says, "If you don't mind, sir, I'm going to shut down for a while." And he says, "Yeah, sure, go ahead," right?
Right.
Well, there was an image that Star Wars put out on Twitter. Star Wars put this out on Twitter this was a good 4 or 5 years ago. They used to do these little historical look backs at the movies. And they took that screenshot of that and they wrote underneath it that basically Anakin or 3PO knew that was Anakin's lightsaber. And it was part of his programming to when anything came up that was Anakin related, he would shut down.
Oh, fascinating.
So it's so weird because what happened was people started. It was the weirdest thing, and I technically don't really agree with how people reacted to it, but there was a lot of Star Wars fans that actually reacted negatively to that information, saying that, which is, again, I don't want to assume people don't feel this way or something like that, but a lot of people were expressing that Star Wars was playing down the fact of post-traumatic stress disorder.
Okay.
PTSD, right?
Yep.
They were saying that Star Wars was saying 3PO was having that and that was bad. They shouldn't do that. So they actually deleted that tweet shortly after. But anyway, long story short, they put that out there and other people were going crazy. Like, what? Does that mean that, somehow Anakin programmed him like that, or maybe Bail Organa programmed him like that somehow? I don't know. It was never explained further.
Yeah, because you'd have to think, when would Anakin have gotten to him to do that?
Correct.
Unless it was once. It obviously wasn't when he was a kid when he first built them. It would have been later at another time, sometime. Yeah. So
it could have been Bail Organa, but I don't know. It was weird, in the full context of it doesn't really matter when he says that, because his battery could have been low and he just wanted to shut off. But it's just interesting that happened like that.
Yeah, no, I thought it was. I mean, it's fascinating anyway, just because I love those two droids and just the discussion. Look at this. We've been talking for 15 minutes about R2 and C-3PO. I love these two characters, and a lot of people do. And it's just the ideas, the possibilities that come about with what these two droids have witnessed, what they've been a part of. It's fascinating. And I just keep thinking, what is in R2's memory banks? Because he's never been wiped. So, yeah. and I like your angle, like, because I'm coming at it as a total fanboy. Oh, look at R2, he's such an emotional character, and you're coming at it from a science perspective. Like, he's just a droid. He doesn't understand feelings. He doesn't get anything. Like, he's just an astromech. So obviously I have a much more emotional connection to him. Right.
No.
But
and BB-8's the same way, because BB-8, in Force Awakens, when he's told that Poe didn't make it, and Finn tells him Poe died in the wreck, he looked puts sad, his head down. He looks sad, right? So again, I think he understands what death means, but is he truly sad? I don't know. It's one of those things in the universe that you're kind of questioned,
Well, this is a galaxy a long time ago, far, far away, so maybe droids do have feelings, unlike our androids and stuff here that can't. Yeah, or maybe they're programmed to process loss and things like that, and that's, because... I mean, look at R2. Luke goes into hiding. What does R2 do? He shuts down. He says, oh, my master, my best friend is gone. I'm not going to do anything then. He shuts down, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So,
it's definitely good. That's a whole other episode, I think. We could talk about the two droids for ever.
Well, maybe we should stop right now because this was an episode. We're already 40 minutes in.
I know, right?
Hopefully everybody doesn't mind. I mean, it's just Star Wars talk. Everyone's at home.
Totally.
We got stuff to talk about. We're here because we're fans, so... Hopefully that's all right. But let's get back into Clone Wars then, because that's what we're originally here for. Now, you do have something here about the episodes coming up in April.
Yeah, so an article came out finally releasing descriptions of the episodes coming out in April.
Oh, the ones that you were wondering about.
Yes.
Okay, so, is there stuff being given away? Is it too...
Not really. It's just it's really setting up what's going to happen with Ahsoka and the Siege of Mandalore. But next week, this coming Friday's episode 6, we knew was called Deal or No Deal. Right. And we're still furthering the adventure of Ahsoka with the Martez twin, the sisters, not twins, but they're sisters.
Yes.
But anyway, what we didn't know is beyond that, which is episodes 7, 8, 9, and 10, which is happening in April. So April 3rd, episode 7, you're getting an episode called Dangerous Debt. And the description is this: taken prisoner by the Pikes, which is a crime syndicate. Ahsoka and the Martez sisters attempt to escape.
Oh, okay. So 3 episodes with Ahsoka. Good.
That's right. And then a 4th one, which finishes this arc, I'm assuming, on April 10th, is called Together Again. And this is Ahsoka bargains for the sisters' freedom and makes a startling discovery.
Together Again. Could that be Anakin coming in?
I think that, or I actually think. Well, here I'll let me read these next two, and you might think of something different. So the next episode after that, episode 9, is called Old Friends Not Forgotten, and this description is: Anakin and Obi-Wan must decide whether to help Ahsoka pursue Maul or rescue Palpatine.
Whoa.
So that is clearly episode 3, the beginning of episode 3.
Yeah.
And then episode 10 on April 24th is The Phantom Apprentice. And this description is: Ahsoka and Republic forces confront Maul on Mandalore.
Ooh, and it begins.
Yes. So the startling discovery, after I read all that, to me, I think could be the discovery of Maul taking control of Mandalore. And I think that it comes from who we see in the trailer standing next to Ahsoka at one point is Bo-Katan.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So...
cool.
I think somehow she gets wind of what's happening, and then of course the next episode, like I said, is when she talks to Anakin and Obi-Wan about it and to figure out what they're going to do.
Hence the term old friends, possibly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Exciting. Okay, this is getting exciting. Okay, stuff's starting to definitely ramp up.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're clearly getting 4 episodes here again of Ahsoka's story with the sisters. And then it's going to end with these last 4 episodes. So we don't know descriptions of episodes 11 and 12 yet. So which are happening in May. Yep.
Yeah. Good. Maybe they're going to keep that under wraps. Awesome, man. Well, that's lots to look forward to. Holy, that's exciting.
It is.
Some good stuff. And then what's next here? Something about Star Wars Celebration. Have you heard?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of throw it out there. Everybody that's listening that possibly has plans to go. There's nothing official yet, but sounds like there's rumors. Sounds like there's rumors of not it canceling, but what I've read a little bit is that it strictly is going to be an online release. Like, they're still going to hold panels and do releases, but it's all going to be streamed. That's kind of what I'm hearing right now. They're obviously waiting to see if it clears up in California, because that's a very bad area for what's happening with the coronavirus. But
yeah.
Because right now, I don't know if you saw that they're talking about possibly looking at options of postponing the Olympics right now.
Yep.
And that's July. So celebrations in August, it looks more and more like it's probably not gonna be able to be open to the public. Now, again, I think they'll do something. They'll keep some kind of streaming going on.
Right.
But yeah, just I just wanted to throw it out there because we haven't really talked about it on our show either about what's going to happen with it. But
well, let's wait and see.
It is a wait and see.
Still,
sure.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, good to know. I might not be coming down there to see you after all this time around.
Sucks. Yeah.
Dang it.
Well, you had a con that you were talking about going up to, right? Obviously, they canceled that probably, right?
They haven't yet, which I'm so surprised about. They have not. I mean, obviously, the celebrities are not going to want to come up here.
When is it?
It's usually mid-April, mid to end of April. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be very surprising if they haven't called that one yet.
So we'll find out. I'm sure they will. I'm sure it will. I mean, it's illegal right now. You're not allowed to have any events with more than 50 people. So I think that's even changed. So. All right, cool. Well, how's that for 40 minutes of news? Good talk.
Yeah. All right, let's get going.
Yeah, let's get into this episode. We're just going to move right along into our overall impressions.
What if he doesn't survive? He's worth a lot to me.
I should say impressions and ratings, and I'm going to kick it off with a 7 bad compressors. Now, I actually like this one better the second time through, because upon first watch, I felt like it was a little bit shallow. Not much to this one, as in, like, there wasn't a lot of story depth. Just a small adventure that kind of... And I want to ask you about this later. It just seemed like it takes place minutes after Ahsoka's last episode when she first fled from the Jedi. And like I said, we'll talk about that for clarification in the chatter. But it basically was just kind of like a reintroduction of Ahsoka and almost like a chapter break between the story arcs that we're getting. I mean, it was good to see her again, see the maturity that she's gained, and she finds herself on her own with no one to rely on. She's managed to keep her wits and good nature while also being cautious of everyone around her at the same time. Now I want to see, after everything we just talked about, now I want to see what they're going to do with their story from here. So just, it was good, but yeah, just a 7. Nothing too deep.
Well, I'm giving it 8 as in 8 levels of Coruscant, which even though there are thousands of levels. But I really did like this episode. Like you, I liked it more the second time I watched it. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize how much I missed Ahsoka until I saw her again.
Yeah.
Yes, we got her in Rebels, but that felt different. That character was more mature, and it just was a different Ahsoka. This was Clone Wars Ahsoka, and you really get that sense that we hadn't seen this character in a long time, because we really haven't. It's been years.
Right.
Even though it's only been a short time, like you said, at the end of season 5 to now. I really did miss her, and I think we're in for an incredible treat seeing her now and through the rest of this season. I can't even wait.
Yeah, well, even for me, because I'm just watching the series now, and I went through and watched that whole recommendation, essential episodes that Disney Plus put out, and I watched all the ones that you told me to watch before we started this podcast. So I feel like I just saw her recently, so I'm not getting that same feeling as you, but it was still just good to see a grown-up version of her here.
Yes, very much so.
definitely. Awesome. Well, let's get into our Cantina chatter and see what we came up with for this episode.
Great warrior. Wars not make one great.
Yes. All right, so the timeline. This is what I wanted to ask you about. I made a hint at it in my opening monologue. This did seem like it takes place right after Ahsoka fled from Anakin in that big chase sequence we saw in the season 5 finale of Clone Wars. So I want to ask you, did we go back in time to fill the gap of what she did right after that? Or was this just showing us that she's been hiding on the lower levels of Coruscant? God, I always have trouble saying that planet name.
Coruscant, yeah, you're right.
Coruscant. You know, she's struggling to get by. She's on a broken down speeder bike with no money. I mean, she looks mature. You stated that. She does look older, but it felt like this is right after she fled. And boom, she's on her bike still trying to get away, and she's going to go dive down into the tunnels and disappear. Set me straight on the timeline here.
Yeah, it's not fully clear, but I think you're right. I think that it's short. It's not like the next day. I think it's shortly after, though. You know, if the series wasn't canceled after we saw her walk away at the end of season 5, because that's when the show got canceled, and we got season 6 only because they released what they had finished, right? So,
right.
I think, again, not 100% sure about this, but I'm pretty sure that this arc was supposed to be a part of season 6. I think we were going to jump in with her, you know, after the first 2 or 3 arcs in season 6, that we were going to get Ahsoka back.
Okay.
So when seasons, you know, or what they called the Lost missions came out, which was season 6, you know, Filoni at the time was told that this is all you got. Just put out what you have done, and that's what they had done. So this wasn't finished yet. He got a chance to finish it now, and it became. So when we go back and we see the full list of the chronological order, I wouldn't be surprised if they move this, you know, ahead of some of those things that happened in season 6. So I think you're right. I think it's shortly after, but there's still has to be a pretty decent gap between this and if what happens is if this leads into the Siege of Mandalore, it's going to be closer to episode 3, meaning that there is a bigger gap between when she leaves and when we see her now. But there might be some time jump between this arc and the last arc of this season. So it is a little tough to figure out exactly where this falls until they actually release that chronological order. But it is. I feel like it's shortly after season 5.
Yeah. Okay, good. That's what I was wondering. So we basically are just going back in time a little bit to catch us up to her story, where she's at, which is then going to probably speed forward to get her back into the right timeline of where things are at. Okay, cool.
In fact, we may watch this Friday's episode and see that there's actually a time jump between this episode and next episode, that she's been there for a little while working with the sisters.
That's a good point. That could be true. Yeah. Yeah, that could be true too. But it does show kind of at the end of this one that she's leaving the sisters, though. So something has to happen to make her come back.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll have to see.
Yeah.
As always, every single week. Oh, we'll have to see. We're going to have to see what they're going to do. Now, what I thought Disney did here, the beginning of every episode, they always say last time on Clone Wars or whatever. They do a quick little catch up, and I thought this time they did a really good job catching you up to her story, because if you didn't get to see that list of essential episodes that I had told you about, that really got you caught up to Ahsoka and where she was right up to the season 5 finale. But even if you didn't, I thought they did a good job with this opening introduction to say, hey, this is where she's at. Now you're good to go.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think it was a short summary of her life on the Clone Wars, and it was really good. Definitely.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I wanted to ask you about it, since we're going to be talking about Ahsoka all over the place because this was her episode. it appears that she decided to go into hiding in the lower levels of Coruscant to figure things out for herself. Because you would have thought, like when we last saw her, when she's fleeing the Jedi, she's trying to get away from Anakin, I would have thought she'd go off world and just get the heck out of there and disappear. But instead, she decides to stay there and disappear. Now, that I guess my question is, was that her choice, or is she just left with nothing and she doesn't have a choice? She can only go into hiding down below.
Yeah, I think it's a choice. I think she, if you watch some of those episodes, especially the last part of season 5, when she leaves, she goes into the lower depths of there, and right. I think she just understands that area down there is where you go to hide or go to kind of be isolated. People down in the lower levels, are kind of stuck there.
Right.
They don't really have a chance to kind of ascend, in a sense, to the top of where the high society is. So, yeah, so it's definitely, I feel like it's definitely a choice for her that she wants to kind of go start from the bottom and kind of work her way back and find her way,
And maybe it's just easier, too, because of how large and how many people are down there. It's easy to get lost, I guess, yeah. And we're going to talk I got a few questions about all of that.
And I definitely feel like down there, I don't think she expected to run into somebody that had such an opinion about the Jedi and the war.
Yeah, that's true.
That's where I think she was trying to get away from those conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, she was being very secretive this whole episode. She didn't want to let anything out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, this is just a fun point. I wanted to ask you if you knew about this or not. Like when she does get into the fight with those thugs to protect Trace, she's using these amazing acrobatic moves in her hand-to-hand combat. It's even different than what we see Anakin or Obi-Wan use. She has a different fighting style. And I was just curious. It reminded me of a movie called Jim Cotta. Did you ever see that?
No, I have not seen that.
Okay, I'm gonna find a trailer and I'll send it to you.
Yeah,
Jim Cotta. They took one of your guys as the American gold medal gymnast. I can't remember if Kurt Connor or something. I can't remember. Way back from the 80s. It's an 80s movie. Because he won the gold medal in gymnastics, and they put him in a kung fu adventure movie, and they combined karate with gymnastics, and it's so funny. It's super cheesy, but it's actually entertaining because he goes on a quest to save somebody or whatever, and he has to prove himself, and it's this great big game, that's this elaborate game there. He has to go out into the wilderness and survive, and there's these towns of villagers, and the villagers are all sick or something, and they just beat up on anybody, and that comes into there. So he gets surrounded by this city of villagers, and he basically used gymnastics and karate combinations to fight them off. So in the middle of town where the water well is, there happens to be a pommel horse, and he gets on there and he's just swinging around doing his gymnastics as they're all coming into, and he's just kicking left and right, boom, boom, boom. They're all going down because he's busy. Which looked what she was doing here. It's pretty funny. I'll find a clip and I'll post it on the Facebook page too. It's just it's too funny. Anyway, I just wanted to make a little fun point about that. Now, they stated this in this episode that Trace owns the best repair shop on level 1313. Now, the way they stated, I wanted to ask you, does that number or level have any significance in Star Wars canon? Is there something about level 1313?
Huge.
Okay. So I was picking up on something.
Yes.
All right. Tell us.
Okay, so back in 2013, I think, or 2012 or 2013, what you need to do is you need to search YouTube for Star Wars 1313, which is a video game they were making. And it was being done under the Unreal Engine. It was the first kind of open world adventure Star Wars game that was coming out. And it was getting developed by LucasArts, and all you knew was back then, there were discussions about a live action TV show that Lucasfilm was working on.
Right.
And it was tentatively called Star Wars Underworld, which was going to be about the bounty hunters and the seedy underworld of Star Wars universe. And it was going to take place on the lower levels of Coruscant. And this game was going to tie into that a little bit, and it was called 1313 because it took place on level 1313 of Coruscant. So, and after a while, which is crazy because we saw they ended up debuting the gameplay of the game, I think at E3 that year, and it showed like the first 5 or 6 minutes of the game, and it was, I'm telling you, you can watch it on YouTube. It is incredible. But what we found out later, so what happened was Lucasfilm, the Lucas Arts, whoever the president was or the CEO at the time, ended up leaving, and they shut down kind of LucasArts. So the game got put on hold. Well, then a year later, Disney buys Lucasfilm and basically closes LucasArts. So the game got shelved and ultimately never got released, obviously. And it wasn't fully done yet, but it was close.
Right.
But we found out later in the years to come that the game was actually centered around Boba Fett. You were going to be Boba Fett, and it was him and his storyline and his, you were going to play as if you watch the gameplay trailer, you were going to play this first character, but what happens is he ends up getting killed by somebody who ends up being Boba Fett, and you actually take over Boba Fett and then do the adventure. So anyway,
cool.
1313 was a game that everybody wanted, and it never came out. And I think I actually read that it actually won Game of the Year one year, and it never even came out.
Oh, that's hilarious.
That is so. When I heard 1313, the first time I watched that episode, I was like, "Wow, that is great that they made that connection."
Yeah, cool. Okay, so there was definitely some significance to it. That's awesome.
That's a game that, I mean, again, I'll send you a link to that. It is
sure.
It looked incredible, and I remember sitting at Celebration and seeing this footage, and just everybody just getting blown away. Could not wait. That would have made so much money for them.
Well, I'm making a list of things we need to post on the Facebook page so people can check these things that we're talking about. That'll be fun. So now I don't want to get into it too much about Coruscant here and its levels, because I've got this in the bounty section. But I do want to ask you: if this is level 1313, is there that many levels? How many are there? Do you know?
5,127.
What?
Yes.
That's a specific number, 5,127.
That's how many levels in Coruscant. Yes.
Wow.
From level 1 to 5,127. And 5,127 is the surface of the city.
Okay. Well, we're gonna talk about that. So
yep.
Okay, that's what I was curious about. Okay, cool.
So needless to say, 1313 is on the lower levels.
Okay. So which is number one? The
one is the bottom.
The one closest to the surface, or one at the very bottom?
One is closest to the core.
To the core of the planet.
To the original surface of the planet. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. See, these are all the stuff I want to talk about in our bounty section. Okay. Totally. So it counts from the bottom up then. So 5,127 is the very top level before you're in the sky.
Yeah, where what you see where the Senate chambers are and the Jedi Council, yeah, that's on the top level, 5,000 level.
Okay. There's so much I want to ask you about Coruscant here, because there's more than I know about.
I freaking love Coruscant. So
yeah, I know. Yeah, that's why I want to get it. That's why I saved it. I saved it as our big discussion for the bounty section. Okay, so we know there's 5,000 levels. Awesome.
Yes.
Now, another funny thing I just wanted to ask you about, because this cracks me up. Have you ever noticed that in every single movie or TV scene that shows a mechanic working on an engine, they're always using a wrench to tighten something? As if all engines are only held together by a bolt and a wrench. Have you noticed that?
Totally noticed that. And yeah, that's the I don't know.
It's the go-to.
That's the MO, yeah. That's definitely the go-to.
Yeah. Oh, we got a mechanic fixing something. Give him a wrench. He's tightening something. I don't think I've ever seen it otherwise. It's hilarious.
No, that's the mechanic's best friend, I guess. Yeah.
sure enough, the scene with Trace fixing the bike. She's just got a wrench there and she's cranking on something. Because that's all it takes. Make an engine run, you just got to tighten them bolts. All right, now the demolition droids. Are those guys new? I forget what their designation was. Is that something new to you as well?
Yeah, they're binary load lifters, the ones that were in this
right.
episode.
Yeah.
I mean, they're the type of droid has shown up a couple places. This specific droid, though, I mean, this whole Type 2 thing that are, whatever, programmed wrong. This is the first time we've heard of that. But these types of droids it's funny because there's an episode. Did you ever see the animated shorts called Forces of Destiny that Star Wars put out?
No, I did not.
So about either a year or two ago, Disney actually on the YouTube channel, they put out some series of shorts called Forces of Destiny, and it's centered around the female characters of Star Wars. So there's shorts of Leia and Ahsoka and Sabine and Hera. Okay. They're really short, but it's funny because they take a popular scene from a movie, like for example Empire Strikes Back, and they take the scene where Leia is walking down the hallways of Hoth and comes across a Wampa, and her and Chewbacca have to kind of kind of stop this Wampa from destroying the whatever. And so it's a little scene that drops into the movie. It's canon stuff. So, but anyway, there's the one called Path of the Padawan or something like that. I think it's called. Actually, I had it's called the Padawan Path, and it's a short from Ahsoka about Ahsoka, and she's not running, but she's leaving and hurrying to the Jedi temple for a ceremony. And this scene technically takes place between two scenes of the Clone Wars. And during this short, she is running through Coruscant, heading to the council, and there ends up being a droid that looks like one of these binary load lifter droids, kind of terrorizing. But it's like short. You can see like some wires that are shorted out, so it's just happened to be destroying a bunch of stuff. Where she ends up stopping the droid. Anyway, long story short, it looks exactly like this kind of droid, but it's a little different. So when she references in here that she's had experiences with, that's what I think they're referencing is this short.
Okay.
I know it was a long-winded answer, but that's
but still. Cool.
That's the only place I've kind of seen this droid.
Yeah, that's the only place you kind of seen them. Now, what I found interesting about them is that Ahsoka says these guys were prone to violence. That's why they were, decommissioned. Okay, demolition droids prone to violence. Demolition droids prone to violence. That seems like a pretty bad combination to me.
Yeah, it's very much so. Yeah, why would they be called demolition droids?
Yeah.
If they wouldn't be.
Crazy idea, but still funny nonetheless. I mean, I can imagine, okay, well, how many of them went crazy before they realized they better decommission them and take them out of service?
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
All right, now we've mentioned Trace a couple times. Let's talk about Trace, because to me, that's a clever name. Now the title of this episode actually makes sense. Because it's not gone without a trace, it's gone with a trace. And you're thinking, what? We know this is Ahsoka. Does she leave a trail behind for Anakin to follow? What did that title mean? Mm-hmm. Well, it means nothing. It just means she's gone into hiding with her new friend Trace.
Yeah.
Now, in listening to the actress, she sounded very Latin to me, just the way she spoke. And so I looked up the actress, which is in the credits, she called herself Brigitte Cali. Production name is Brigitte Canales. And she's got Mexican and Cuban descent. So I was like, that is why. That's why she sounds the way she does.
Good catch. Yeah.
Yeah. What did you think of Trace? Did you like her?
I did. In the original creation of this story arc, that character didn't exist. And the character was named something else, and I don't think there was a sister. So this got changed into this new series and this re-release.
Right.
So, not familiar with Trace at all, but I liked her. I think I like what she's, well, we need to know more, but I like where it's going for sure.
Yeah, if she's going to be in the next couple episodes, then we'll definitely get to learn a little bit more about her. Now, the trouble that was for the two sisters here was going by the name of Pintu and his henchmen, and Pintu was working for his boss trying to collect the money. And I looked at Pintu, and I looked like the two tall, skinny guys that were with them. Are these alien species that we know of? I tried going through my encyclopedia to find the picture, but I couldn't find them. Do we recognize these species?
Well, yeah, I looked him up too, and he's what's known as a Yushin.
Okay.
That's all I've at least been able to find about him. The Yushins actually have a big kind of expanded universe background. I mean, they've been around, but they have in non-canon. This is kind of the first time we've seen them really in canon. I think there was actually, I want to say there was one or two of them that showed up in Rebels.
Right.
But I'm not. I don't remember. But yeah, this Pintu is a Yushin, and he's working for somebody.
Right. Now, what about the two tall guys that were with them?
Yeah, I don't know what they. I've never seen them before. I don't know what they are.
And I couldn't tell if they were Cyclops. It looked like they only had one eye, but then I thought, oh, was that a visor they're wearing? What is that? They look.
Yeah, I can't tell if that's just a outfit they're wearing or what they look like underneath. I don't know. But did you know cool. Pintu was actually voiced by Bobby Moynihan?
No.
Yeah. Voiced by Bobby Moynihan, who was the voice. He had a voice in Star Wars Resistance. But for those who know, he's a comic on Saturday Night Live.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Now, Ahsoka here. This is just something... I'm laughing at these moments. I'm picking them out in this series for some reason. Because this to me was just so predictable. She says, make sure you put the restraining bolt on. And of course you knew something bad was going to happen. She wouldn't say that line if it was going to lead to one of them not working.
Yes, very much so.
The series seems to do that. It seems to write in the dialogue the foreshadowing of what's about to happen. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, I had thought a while ago when, a restraining bolt goes all the way back to the very first film,
Yeah, it does. Yeah, to R2 and C-3PO.
It makes you wonder, why isn't it protocol that they all just have like an internal restraining bolt that you can just easily use? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I don't know. Why doesn't all droids just have some kind of chip in them that you can have a restraining bolt or an internal restraining mechanism, and you just have a trigger? I don't know.
See?
That made me wonder that.
That comes full circle to our discussion about 3PO and R2. Maybe droids are a little more sentient in the Star Wars universe, and putting a restraining bolt on them is essentially putting them into slavery, like you're handcuffing them, or like it's slavery. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe droids are a little bit beyond what we really think they are. Maybe that's tied into that.
Maybe.
You put a restraining bolt on them, you're making them your slave. You are now saying, I own you. Otherwise, it's their choice to follow and to obey.
Yeah. That was L3's whole thing, right? In Solo, the movie Solo, is liberating all the droids that were restrained.
Yeah, see? So maybe there's something to that. We know she was definitely a lot more beyond just being a droid. She was definitely more sentient.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
I think Lando did a little programming with her, though.
Well, now she's the Millennium Falcon, so...
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
All right, let's get into our favorite scenes here. Now, mine this week is just a short one, but it's got a lot of meaning to it. And this was when Ahsoka asks Trace, why are you helping me? And Trace replies, shouldn't I? And for me, I'll play the clip here, but for me, it's very indicative of what kind of character Trace is. It shows us what kind of person she is. In a world that's going to hell from war up on the surface, and the people down below are being forgotten about, it shows that there still is someone decent, some nice people trying to hang on that are willing to help each other out. And I really liked how that shined through with that one simple line. And I'll play that, and you can just hear it in her voice, the way she says it.
Why don't you get that thing inside and settle in? Thanks. Don't take too long. Time is money.
Hey, why are you helping me?
Shouldn't I? Seemed like the right thing to do. You can leave if you want.
No, it's all right. I'll stay. Thank you.
That's good. I really need the money.
So, did you hear what I'm saying when she says, should I? Like, she's almost questioning, why are you even questioning me why I'm helping you? I should. And it just really is telling on the type of character that Trace is.
Yeah, good scene. No, very good scene.
All right, what do you got for us?
My favorite scene is one without dialogue. It's shortly around that time also, and Ahsoka walks out just onto the ramp, and we get a good look at the corridor there, the tunnel in a sense that goes all the way up to the surface, and she is some great beautiful cinematic shots.
Yeah,
from behind her when this big cruiser ship is ascending in front of her, and then she looks up, and then it's a great just kind of look on her face, and the music is very Star Wars. I don't know, it was very cool, very very good.
Yeah, and just
scene.
a moment too, and
Yeah.
it kind of put you in Ahsoka's boots there. What is she feeling? The way she looks up and she's like, "Oh man, I've fallen."
That's right.
Look how far I've fallen, and she's looking up like how far she's got to climb again to get back to, where she was. So you can kind of make that relation to her position in life to where her physically actually is. Which is, now you say there's no dialogue, but I start the clip a little bit early so we do get a couple words, and then you can hear this beautiful music.
Maybe this was a bad idea. I don't know what I'm doing here.
Hey! What did I say? Look, you can stay here as long as you like. If you can pay me. What's with you?
John Williams, I swear he's in there.
Yeah, I know. Totally,
He's
man.
conducting. Yeah, that was beautiful.
Love it.
All right, let's move into our bounties.
What if he doesn't survive? He's worth a lot to me.
Now, this goes back to the beginning. I said this episode wasn't that deep, and it truly wasn't. There wasn't a lot of, oh wow, depth to this where we could really get into some serious discussion. But there's two big things we can talk about here. Ahsoka, which we've talked a lot about, and Coruscant. And I want to talk about Coruscant first because I only know it from what we've seen in the movies. I don't know a lot of depth about this thing. So I want you to start telling us a little bit more about why you love this planet so much. It's a super industrial planet. I haven't seen any plant life, no nature anywhere to be seen. So my first question, is there any at all, or is the entire planet now industrial?
Well, there is plant life now. If you read, and I need to go back and refresh my memory about it, but there's a book that came out prior to the release of Rogue One called Catalyst, and it's a prequel book. It is phenomenal. I got it right here behind me. It's written by James Luceno, and it kind of catalogs the time that of the construction of the Death Star. Right, it follows an early Director Krennic and Galen Erso and young Jyn Erso and how that happens. Now, what happens is the early discoveries or the early creations of the weapon, the super weapon that goes into the Death Star, were actually created on the lower levels of Coruscant. Okay. And when they were down there, there's descriptions and there's discussions down there and about them being like Jyn Erso's mother. God, her name escapes me. Starts with an L, but anyway, she liked being down there because there was like a garden space that she went to. So somehow there's plant life and like tree life in certain areas. I don't know what level they were on, but they were pretty low down there, I think. So, but most of it, as we see in episode 1, when Anakin is first flying on the ship to Coruscant, Rick O'Lee, who's the pilot, flying the Queen's ship, tells him, Coruscant, it's the whole planet's one big city. So yes, the city has been built from the surface of the original planet outward and upward, and it is all mainly city, but somehow there is life somewhere underneath that is plant life and nature, because there's a lot of history on Coruscant as far as temples and I mean, in fact, it's kind of known that underneath the Jedi temple is actually a Sith temple.
Oh, right.
So there's a lot down there, and that's why I am so in love with Coruscant, is because when I first saw that in episode 1, now we got a glimpse of it when the special editions came out, the original trilogy in the late 90s. Yeah. We got that included scene of the celebration, right? They showed a shot of Coruscant really fast. That was our first glimpse into it. And then we saw it in episode 1. And when I saw it in episode 1, I was like, man, because it's weird because we were just talking about it before we recorded. Like, I live in a somewhat small town, 350,000 people. But I'm actually a city guy. Like, I love concrete. I love the idea of condos. But I live in a house in the suburbs, which is not really me. But, so like Coruscant is like my city. Like I would live in Coruscant.
You're like a techno future punk kind of guy.
Yeah. But there's so many. If you think about Star Wars, there's so many stories just on Coruscant that you can have, right?
Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, I could just let you go on and on about it. Some other questions will maybe lead you down some other paths. So that while we're on talking about nature, I mean, we're in this episode. She says we'll meet you at the wharf. Let's go for a drink or whatever. And the wharf is a restaurant, but it's on the water. So what I'm wondering is that water, that restaurant, is that at the bottom level, which could be the original planet's surface?
I don't think so. I mean, I think there's definitely natural or artificial lakes and streams and stuff like that they've built. As you can see, when you look back at that scene, there's a lot of it's weird because it's not how do you say it? It's not like fully materialized buildings that are just built on top of each other. There's actually a lot of space in between. So there's structures that are holding kind of each level in that space, but there's openness on the level, so you seem like you're in an open area, like you could see far away and you see depth, but yeah, I'm sure they put in some unnatural kind of elements to it to make it seem like it's on whatever, but because they're still on 1313. They didn't like go lower.
They didn't go lower. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
and that's what I was wondering when I asked you how many levels there were and stuff. So now I guess going back to the idea of no plant life and stuff, like how do they have clean and breathable air down there? Because that's what you need plant life for. Unless because the city, the planet is so industrial, they obviously have some type of air purifiers or something.
Yeah.
Because nobody with that much industry around you wouldn't survive. Any breathing creature could not survive down there without the air being circulated with actual fresh, proper air.
Yeah, I agree. I would have to guess that they're pulling air from the surface, and it's funneling down into the lower levels. That's the only way I can think of. Like it's almost like a vacuum, and they're pumping air down there. But it's
makes sense.
But they always talk about it. Like I think even Trace even mentioned something about it being dirty or something down there or something. It's just not. It's not like it is up the top for sure.
No, we've seen it in clips in different episodes. I mean, you would expect it to be slummy. And you're in the depths of the planet. You don't expect them to be keeping it clean. It's going to be slummy. It's going to be like back alleys in the middle of New York or something. And it actually, a lot of it reminds me of Blade Runner.
Yeah, right.
If you remember the Harrison Ford movie,
yes,
their futuristic city looked very much like this. Now, going back to the levels idea, there were countless levels in it. Well, you gave us the exact number, 5,127. Now, what I want to ask you is, are they built from the ground up? So there's 5,000 levels from the original surface of the planet going up into the sky? Or did they build them into the ground and it goes deep into the core of the planet, below the ground?
No, as far as I know, they built from the surface of the planet up. So the diameter of the planet has been increased based on the cities that have built on top of each other.
It's the diameter of the planet. So you mean the atmosphere and everything? The planet's gotten wider all the way around.
That's what I'm assuming, because the 5,000 levels have been just built on top of each other from level 1, which was on the surface of the planet.
Okay, yeah. So how many miles is that? 5,120. How many miles up does that go? I wonder.
That I don't know if that's ever been kind of released. I mean, the diameter of the planet. I think I saw that. The diameter of the planet is 12,240 kilometers. So, I don't know.
What's that compared to Earth?
Yeah, that's true. What's the diameter of the Earth? I could probably find that out. The diameter of the Earth is 7,926 miles, which I don't know. We don't really do kilometers.
Yeah, it's 12,000 kilometers. I got that here. So, but you said 7,000 miles, and Coruscant is 12,000 miles. So
no, 12,000 kilometers.
Oh, 12,000 kilometers. So it's about the same size as Earth then.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Earth is 12,000
kilometers is 7,900 miles, roughly.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So it is about the size of the Earth, yeah.
So, well, I guess then 5,000 levels, they're probably going up pretty high into the sky. I mean, if you think about it, look at our tallest building. It doesn't come close to reaching the outer atmosphere of our planet. So maybe 5,000 levels, they're still within breathable air. It's not too thin yet. Everything is...
Oh, right, yeah.
Maybe in realistic terms that it still is survivable at that height. So it amazes me if you think about the structure. Like, a couple of things that come to mind: where do they get the material to build a planet? And then think of all of Earth being covered in metal and wood structure. Where does that material come from? And how does the planet support that much weight? Like, how can,
I know.
the amount of weight, how do you, like, would you want to be on level 1 to 10 at all, knowing how much steel is above your head right now?
Yeah, we mentioned this, me and Casey have talked about this, like, we'd love to sit down with some, like, engineer and actually find out if this is actually what it would take to really build something like this up. And
oh, man. Now, I can understand your love of this planet and your fascination with it, because just imagine going down into those levels. You've got 5,000 levels. You could just go down 100 levels. I mean, the planet is huge. We've seen, even at the surface, when Anakin and Obi-Wan are chasing someone, they're ripping along on speeders and flying around under it. The surface of this city is massive.
Mm-hmm.
And there's traffic lanes and everything. I mean, I don't know how anyone remembers where they're going. It's insane.
Yeah.
You could spend a lifetime touring around, adventuring around the city, and never even see half of it.
Oh no!
But the stuff that could be hidden down there.
Yeah.
You know, the criminals and the underground and the, you know, everything. Just imagine what you possibly could find down there amongst these levels. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and you can, you know, again, you can tell also, like in episode 2, when there's that big kind of speeder chase at the beginning of the movie, right? That, you know, again, it's not all like the level 5,000 at the top or whatever, 5,127. Like, it's not all flat. Like, you know, Obi-Wan and Anakin, they fell. I mean, they were falling when they jumped off this. I mean, there's a lot of gaps. You know, these. Yeah. Most of the towers that rage up from the. So, well, I guess that's actually a question I have. I don't think 5,200, you know, whatever I said, 5,127. I don't think that level is the. I don't know if that's the top of the surface where then all of a sudden these buildings are taller than that. I you know.
Or if they consider the floors of the buildings part of the levels. Yeah.
That I don't know. And I don't think there's actually a full description of the size of the levels. You know, like I think maybe one level could be a lot bigger than another level. You know, a level could be just like what we consider just a story. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. Like level 300 maybe doesn't wrap the entire planet. You know, maybe there's a huge chunk of ground somewhere that they couldn't bust through, and you know, so level 300 only is you know, a few miles long or something like that.
Yes,
and more levels are below or above it. Yeah, and then, well, like you said, like if you picture the city, like you said, when Anakin and Obi-Wan are flying through it and they fall off and everything, you just got all these towers and sky. It's basically like a downtown. Like imagine New York City. It's like a bunch of skyscrapers.
That's right.
When you're walking down the street and you're looking up in the sky like, holy cow, look at all these 100-floor buildings around me, and yet you're on the ground level, but you're looking up at all these towers. It's the same scope.
That's right.
But just imagine that the size of a planet, that same scope spanning across a planet.
Yeah, imagine New York covering this Earth. Yes. Yeah. That's basically what it is, yeah.
Oh, it's so hard to put into words to get people's minds to explode, to picture this, like the scope of what you could find down there, how big that is, the adventures. I mean, you and me could get on a speeder and dive down that tunnel that Ahsoka was looking at, go down to a level 1,000 and go through a doorway and get into some tunnels and wander around. We'd get so friggin' lost we'd never be able to come back up again.
Yeah, I know.
Like you would just never would know. And yeah. Now, talking about that tunnel, that I'm assuming there's probably a bunch of those. That's kind of like an elevator system, like it's a shaft for all the ships to go up and down to whatever levels they need to. I'm guessing that's just like an access corridor, right?
Yeah, there's several of those throughout the city, and those are basically almost like pathways to the different levels.
Yeah,
but there's several of them like that. Yeah,
cool, very cool. Is there anything else you want to tell us about Coruscant?
No, I'm just fascinated by it, and I'm highly disappointed that we didn't get a shot or any kind of mention of it in the sequel trilogy.
Yeah,
movies. Very disappointed that we didn't go back. In fact, Colin Trevorrow's episode 9, the director that was originally supposed to be doing that movie. His script had a lot of it happening on Coruscant. So, unfortunate that we didn't get back there or even get a mention of it or a glimpse of it, because it is the centralized location. I mean, the Galactic Republic was headquartered there for centuries. So, I don't know why we didn't see it or hear about it yet.
Along with so many other questions.
But I think we'll get there again, because this whole High Republic stuff that's happening, you know, all that's got to take place on Coruscant.
Yeah.
So
okay. Well, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's switch over then to Ahsoka. I want to talk a little bit more about Ahsoka. Now, you mentioned already her species is called Togruta. Is that how you say it? Togruta?
Yes, Togruta.
Okay. Now, from what I read about her, I actually looked them up in my encyclopedia of Star Wars species, and it says in there that they're a very peaceful species. They only fight when absolutely necessary. And we already talked about their lifespan. They're roughly similar to humans and stuff. Mm-hmm. So, but I wanted to ask you about her headpiece, because I was looking at that, and the first question I had is, has it changed color since the earlier seasons of Clone Wars? I thought it was more of a reddish kind of purple color stripes, and now it's blue. Am I wrong in that?
I think they changed. The shape has changed a little bit, or the design, just because they've grown.
Yeah, we'll get into that. So I'm asking first about the color. You think they've been blue the whole time?
I think they have. Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to verify that for sure. But yeah, I just wanted to ask you about that. Now the stripes and the piece itself. What I wanted to ask is that hair? Is it skin like the Twi'leks? And when I looked up the encyclopedia says there's actually horns underneath there with long tails, and that's what's hanging down with all the stripes. Now I'm like, tails of what? Tails of hair? Tails of skin? What is it? Do you know for sure what they are?
Well, what I've always known is that it's actually the same type of whatever's body part as what's in a Twi'lek. And they're called lectus. The Twi'leks, I guess the most popular one as far as good guys go, is Hera from Rebels. Aya Secura, the blue Jedi that we see get killed in Episode 3. They're Twi'leks. Right. You know, they have the two extensions off their head, and those are called lectus, like I said. And they're, as far as I know, these Togrutas have the same. They have three. So they have the two that come in front of them, and they have the one in the back that Ahsoka has.
Okay.
But they're part of their skin. You know, they're not headpieces. They're part of their skin. So
it would hurt
fleshy,
if they got cut off.
They're
or something.
appendages, basically, in a sense.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that would be like cutting an arm off, in a sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But they're similar, you know, the two different species, but they're similar in as far as what they look like and feel like. And
okay. And that must, because the book did say horns, so that must be the two pointy parts right on the top of their head.
Those probably are horns, yeah, because that's what's different than what's a Twi'lek doesn't have horns like that. They just have the two Leku, and so it does look like they have horns at the top, and then the three Leku that come off of that.
Right.
Yeah. So that's interesting, because the other most notable Togruta is Shakti, which we've seen in the Clone Wars as well as the movies.
Right.
Then she has very long Lekus.
So they just grow. Yeah, they grow at their age.
They grow at their age. Sense. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because if you look at Ahsoka, hers are much longer than they were. And I did just look up what she looked like in Season 1, Season 2, and they are blue stripes. They're just much shorter. They barely go past her shoulders.
That's right, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've seen her age for sure and grow.
Now, in this episode, we had kind of touched on this a little bit. She didn't want to talk about any of her Jedi stuff. She was keeping that secret. And she didn't want to use the Force here, I noticed, until the very last second when the machine was going over the edge and it was Trace was hanging onto it and the droid was hanging on. That very last second when it was too heavy for the tow cable, she uses the Force. Now, I'm guessing she just wanted to keep it hidden. She doesn't want anyone to know that, while she's down there in the underworld, she's trying to stay hidden, because if it gets found out that she's a Jedi, someone might rat her out or people might come after her. So that's my first question. But I'm also wondering with that sequence, when she uses the Force, it seems like everyone was so concerned about the machine going overboard, nobody noticed except that little Twi'lek kid.
Well, yeah, the crane on the mechanism, I think, was still working. So I guess people, you kind of just assume that it was that was pulling her up. But the little Twi'lek saw her in the Force, but she definitely can't. Yeah, I think everybody relates the Force to Jedi. So if she wanted to kind of stay hidden, then definitely can't.
Right.
Can't use the Force in public.
No, because who knows what'll happen? There's people down there. Well, you heard Trace herself. She's blaming the Jedi for the war, so she's probably not the only one that thinks that. And she'd be outnumbered. I mean, a Jedi can only do so much. So,
and I'm pretty sure she doesn't have her lightsabers either.
That's another question I wanted to ask you, which I forgot to write in my notes here. Where is her lightsaber?
Well, if I remember, did she not hand it? I think she hands her lightsaber to Anakin, didn't she?
Does she? I don't remember.
I can't remember. I think she may have, or she did. She got it taken away when she was on trial, and I don't think she ever got it back.
Right.
So she doesn't have a lightsaber. And I think she gets lightsabers back when she goes after Maul. But right now, we won't see her with lightsabers.
Now she's got to use the Force.
She's got to use the Force and blasters, maybe, I guess. when something bad happens here soon.
Now, when she used the Force to pull up the speeder and the droid and Trace, it made it seem like she's more powerful now with the Force than what I remember seeing out of her. And it reminded me of the scene when Luke wasn't able to lift his X-Wing out of the swamp, and Yoda had to do it. And then later on in Rise of Skywalker, Luke's finally able to. But here we see Ahsoka, and for all intents and purposes, the glider is probably not much lighter than the X-Wing, and yet she's strong enough to lift it up. So she's definitely gotten more powerful since we saw her last, I would say.
Yeah, I would say so too. I mean, I think that because, like we said, there hasn't been that much time between season 5 and then this, maybe. So it's not like she forgot how to use it or got less powerful. I feel like she's always been pretty powerful, but and I think something like that is, I don't want to say it's easy for a Jedi to do, but that's fairly easy, I would say. Something. The problem is that Luke didn't believe he can do it, right? So.
Oh yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah, I mean, Ahsoka definitely believes she can do stuff like that. So that's do or do not. There is no try. Which is the best line in Star Wars, period.
Yes.
That's my favorite line.
Yeah. Well, that's all I got. Did you have anything that you wanted to bring up?
No, that's a pretty
this episode?
Good dissection, I think, of this episode. It being, what people are calling it a throwaway episode, which I don't agree with, but it's it's a good start to this arc. I think it's a good introduction to these characters, these new sisters, and the reintroduction of Ahsoka. Yeah, I think we're gonna see where this goes from now on, and I think it's a good establishment for this arc for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to start somewhere, and they kind of have to introduce Ahsoka to any new viewers and, kind of show what kind of character she is a little bit if you hadn't followed her missions up to this point. So I hate that term throwaway. Maybe a bit of a filler episode it kind of leans into. It's just, it didn't have any jaw-dropping epic moments that shatters the Star Wars universe, but it's a good reintroduction to who she is.
Right.
Is really what it is, so... Yeah. All right, cool. Well, that wraps it up, I guess, for tonight.
Good stuff.
Again, we got no feedback this week, huh? I think people are just, I don't know if they're keeping up with the show or they got nothing to say. Yeah. I really want you guys to get to us and talk Clone Wars with us. It's fun. I mean, what else have we got to do? I know a lot of people are stuck at home, so...
Right.
Yeah, join the show, part of the show. Give us thoughts and things that we maybe didn't bring up on the show and you want us to answer. You want to ask us questions about things, just like you do with Mandalorian. let us know. And to do that, follow these instructions.
If you'd like to be a part of the show, you can send in feedback to themandalorepodcast at gmail.com. And also join our Facebook group. Otherwise, if you don't, we'll put a bounty on your head.
And there we go.
There we go.
That does kind of wrap us for the night. We had a good discussion about R2 and C-3PO to kick it off.
Yeah. That was good.
But that's all right. You know what? Talking about animated series, I started watching something this weekend because I had, a bit of time to kill. Did you ever watch Young Justice?
I didn't. I love Young Justice, though. I love the idea of it. I watched. No, I haven't seen it. I've seen pieces of it, but I haven't seen it all. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of a continue. They did the Justice League cartoon, and that went for 4 seasons, and then Young Justice came in, and it kind of continues it because it's got all the same characters, the same voice actors and stuff, but it starts off being about all the sidekicks. Mm-hmm. Robin and Aqualad and Megan, Martian Manhunter's niece, and you think it's going to be a kiddie show, like meant for a young audience because it's about the teenagers, and it maybe starts off like that, but man, it is very much like we've said about Clone Wars and Rebels. It is not an animation for kids. Kids can watch it, but it has got some serious storytelling to it. And it went for 2 seasons and then they canceled it, and it was gone for quite a few years, and it just got revived with season 3 because the fans would not shut up about bringing it back. So they brought it back, and I watched the first 2 seasons. I have on Blu-ray. I absolutely love it. It's probably the greatest superhero animations I've ever seen because the stories are so good. And then I just started this season 3 this weekend, and wow, right off the bat, all the sidekicks are now grown up. So they're all now, as the original Justice League members, Batman, Superman, those guys are getting a little bit older, and they're leaving all the missions to save the Earth up to the youngsters now who are not so young anymore. And I tell you, it is hardcore. It is really, really serious, and I just want to recommend it to anybody out there who just likes animation. They love the DC universe. It's so much fun because the Justice League is huge. It's not just the main 3 members. There's hundreds of members of the Justice League, and they all have unique powers, and so many of them get highlighted on this show. It's fascinating to see some characters that you maybe never even heard of before. So definitely check out Young Justice if you can find it somewhere.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think it's on DC Universe, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. That's where it'll be.
Cool.
Definitely. So, but that's all I got for tonight. Don't forget to tweet us at The Mandalore Pod and join the Facebook group. And like I said, my other podcast that's still going on right now, Tomorrow's Legends, talking about DC's Legend of Tomorrow. And David's got Inside the Force that he does every week.
Yes.
More Star Wars good stuff.
Yes. Not too much news going on right now, but we'll find things to talk about for sure.
Yeah. You always got stuff to talk about. I mean, you guys talking a bit about Clone Wars yourself, talk about the movies, just talk about everything. You guys talk about the books, talk about everything that's out there. So
comics now. We're actually, me and Casey are, with his downtime, are getting caught up on the comics.
Oh, nice.
So yeah,
I got to get some from you.
Yes. Yeah, I got them all. Definitely. I spend way too much money on Star Wars. So yeah, I got all the comics.
Cool.
All right,
that's fun. All right, well, I guess that does it for us. We'll see you guys in a week. Thanks for being part of the show with us. This is Siber Wren. I'm going to say it this time. May the Force be with you.
And this is D.Vizsla. Have a great week. Stay safe, everybody.
That is the way.
The Mandalore is not affiliated with Disney, Lucasfilm, or Fairview Entertainment. This is a fan-made podcast for entertainment purposes only. All music and sound effects are solely owned by their respective properties.